What's going on, everyone? So, according to Jovan Buha, the Los Angeles Lakers are waiting around open arms for Trae Young from the Atlanta Hawks. The idea is that if Atlanta has another lackluster season this year and they are disappointed, that Trae Young could demand a trade, request a trade, and kind of force his way to the Lakers. There were talks even last offseason about Trae Young to the Lakers. There were little murmurs going into this offseason about Trae Young to the Lakers. And so it makes sense, right? And Trae Young, he'd want to go to a bigger market. He wants to contend for championships. And if Atlanta is just, a play-in team or a team that misses the play-in altogether, is he really going to be willing to ride it out? Now, this is exactly what was said. If Atlanta Hawks star point guard Trae Young ever decides he wants a change of scenery, the Los Angeles Lakers will potentially be waiting with open arms. According to Jovan Buha of The Athletic, Young has long been on the Los Angeles radar, depending on how his situation unfolds in Atlanta. Again, Trae Young, guy is he's a liability on the defensive end. He's undersized at 6'1", and he doesn't have some ridiculous wingspan. He's got a 6'2" wingspan or something like that. So he's not like this guy that is going to impact the game a lot on the defensive end. But he is a bucket, right? He is a legit, 27 and 10 guy, right? Not rebounds, but assists. This is a guy that can absolutely play make and operate your offense. He's a guy that can play on the ball, can play off the ball, just elite level shooting when it comes to just being able to score, his range and stuff like that. He did struggle this last season from three-point range. He shot 33.5%, which is never good. But he did shoot 38% last season, the previous season, on 8 attempts, right? And when he seems to be a guy the higher the volume, the better shooting he is, which I think is odd because he shot 6 attempts and he was 33.5%. Then 38.2% on 8 attempts. And then the previous year of that, in 2020, 2021, he shot 34%, but again, 6 attempts. Then in 2019, 2020, he shot 9.5 attempts and shot 36%. Right. So, and then his first season in the league, he shot 6 attempts at 32%. So it kind of seems, because he's a streaky guy, right? Once he sees the ball go in the hoop, all of a sudden you look up and it's like, oh, this guy got 30. And he would be an absolute solid scorer. He's a guy that I do think could make some sense for Lakers. He's got that star power. He's a guy that, is can show up big in clutch moments. He's not afraid of the moment. We've seen how he does play when he is in the playoffs. He's not a guy that seems to disappear at all. But there are those questioning concerns of would he really make sense for the Lakers? Right? As a scorer, absolutely. But you look at Austin Reeves, right? Even D'Lo. D'Lo, I'm not saying D'Lo is anywhere close to the player that Trae Young is, or vice versa. But what I'm saying is that D'Lo, you can make the argument that he is a better natural fit with his ability to play on the ball and off the ball, and he doesn't need the ball in his hands so frequently, so heavily, where Trae Young is a high usage guy. He's a guy that's used to being the number 1 option. Is he going to be able to come to the Lakers, be the number 2 option, and allow Austin Reeves to handle the ball and play off the ball more willingly, right? He has done it for Murray, but again, it's just, is that something that he really wants to do? Is that something that he's like, oh, okay, I'm not saying he can't play on the ball and play make and do all that stuff, but it would be a big adjustment. It'd be a big change where you can make an argument like D'Angelo Russell could really kind of provide a lot of the same things as just if you wanted to just make him a scorer. Shot 42% from 3 for the Lakers. He's a guy that gives you 17 a game. Now, I don't think he's going to give you 27 a game, right? Like Trae Young would, but I don't think the Lakers necessarily need that with an Austin Reeves. Obviously the idea is Trae Young would make sense once LeBron left, but you have Rui Hachimura who could go get you buckets. You have scoring, right? You have the size, you have the defense. My thing is if the Lakers are going to get another star to replace LeBron, I think you're almost better off waiting, right? If you can get Trae Young and it's something that he wants to come, he kind of forces his way here, I don't think the Lakers would say no. I think it'd be kind of hard for the Lakers to say no because Trae Young is such a dynamic player, but I don't think he's like a necessity, right? Like, I would rather wait. Like, I would rather, like, LeBron leaves and, you go and you move Rui to the starters, and let's assume Max Christie takes that leap. The Lakers really believe that he's going to, and that he could be the next big thing, which is another argument for not really wanting Trae Young or needing Trae Young, right? Because if Max Christie really does take that next step, then Austin Reeves as your point guard, Max Christie as your 2, like, where's Trae Young going to be? Could you move Christie to the 3? Sure, technically, because he's like 6'6", 6'7" now. But, it seems like he's the guy that would be best at the 2 guard, right? So you'd have Austin Reeves and Max Christie as your backcourt of the future. So where does Trae Young kind of fit in that regard? Granted, yeah, you get the talent and you try to make it work. But regardless, I would rather, if LeBron left, just run a starting unit of Reeves, Christie, Vando, Rui, and Anthony Davis for a year or two, and then see what happens with Giannis, or see what happens with, Luka if Dallas doesn't figure it out, right? Because, you're talking 3 years from now or whatever, 3-4 years from now, where anything could happen at that point, right? And you're probably going to have to start re-signing some of these guys or giving them extensions. Like, it's going to be a different thing, right? But it also depends on if Trae Young pushes immediately, right? So Trae Young is under contract this year, and then the next 2 years, but in 2026, 2027, he has an early termination option. So he could kind of force his way after this season, right? And, say like, hey, if you don't trade me, I'm just gonna leave for nothing. But even then, Atlanta could wait another year, right? But even then, right? So LeBron's under contract this season, and then he has the option to re-sign or to opt in next season, or he could restructure his contract, right? He could, if somebody wants to come to Lakers, he could make that happen, or just pick up the option and pick up where he left off, right? Those are the options for LeBron. But let's say LeBron picks up that option next season, Trae Young would be going into the final year of that contract, because again, he could early terminate it, and then LeBron his contract would be over unless he signs a new 1+1, but even then, he could opt out again and put together this team of him, Trae Young, and Anthony Davis, right? If the Lakers were going to go and trade for Trae Young. Problem is if you have to trade for Trae Young, what are you going to have to give up? Right? Like, again, I love Trae Young. I like him as a player. I think he is solid. I think he is dynamic. I don't think he's a guy that's worth blowing it all up for, right? Because Atlanta's not going to just say, okay, yeah, we'll just do a D'Lo Trae Young swap, right? So you're probably giving up Christie, right? That's probably where it starts. You're probably giving up Shafino and Maxwell Lewis, which, again, I don't think that's like the end of the world. But then who else, right? You're not giving up Reeves. So are you willing to lose Rui for him? Like, again, I'm not saying Rui is a better player than Trae Young, but the fit, the position, right? Like, we don't need an undersized guard that can go get you 30 a night, right? Maybe we need somebody that gets you 30 a night when LeBron leaves, right? Like, maybe that's something, but like, who knows where Austin Reeves is 2 years from now? Like, what if he's a 25, 5-5 guy? Or what if Max Christie really does take that next leap, that next step? Or what if Rui emerges and really kind of continues and grows year in and year out, and then LeBron leaves and he's just dynamic, right? Like, Trae Young, if you can get him cheap, sure, right? Like, if Trae Young pulls a Dame and is like, I want you to trade me to the Lakers, and you're only going to trade me to the Lakers, and basically if any other team trades for me, they're only going to get me for a year, right? Like, could that be something that kind of swayed people or organizations to not try to trade for Trae Young, and then they're able to kind of land Trae Young on a cheaper end. That's a possibility. Do they wait for him to be a free agent and then just sign him? Right? Like, but again, like if that's the case, I would rather wait and see. Now, if like all else fails, right? Like let's say Giannis ends up going to like the Knicks instead of Lakers, and there's not really any other like superstars at the moment that are willing to come to the Lakers, and it just doesn't really make a lot of sense, right? Like, and it's like, okay, well, Trae Young's willing to come to Lakers, like at that point maybe, where it's like at least we got Trae Young and Anthony Davis, right? And then we got Austin Reeves, you got Jared Vanderbilt. If you have to trade Rui, maybe they trade Rui, right? Maybe Lewis ends up stepping up or something like that, or maybe Cam Reddish or something like that ends up evolving to where it's like, okay, like, we can stomach losing Rui. It's just, I don't know. The biggest argument I think for Trae Young is his age, because he's still only 24 years old. Even 2 years from now, he would just be entering his prime at like 26, 27. So to me, that's the biggest argument. Or if LeBron is still playing at an elite level and LeBron looks at it and goes like, let's get Trae Young and I'll take a discount to make that happen, because me, Trae Young, and Anthony Davis with Austin Reeves would be enough to win an NBA championship, right? Like, I don't know. I think it just comes down to circumstances, right, and situation. I think Trae Young's a guy you keep in your back pocket, right? I think the idea and option of signing him is something that you keep in your back pocket, and you go, okay, like push comes to shove, worst case scenario, we could go get Trae Young, right? But I don't think that that's something the Lakers should be heavily trying to push for, right? I know he's been linked to them for some time. There's a lot of questions with him and Murray, and to a degree, I think you can make an argument Atlanta's current roster is almost suited better for Murray and his style of play. But I do understand the idea of like him kind of playing off the ball and allowing Trae Young to be in a sense. But I just think like, yeah, you could kind of change it up by unloading Trae Young. It wouldn't kill you because you got Murray and you're good, right? And I think that he's still good and serviceable enough, and a guy that go get you nearly a triple-double every night, and especially if he's like the main point guard, right? Atlanta seems a little clunky at times, and I think that that's the biggest problem. And I think the worst thing that happened to Atlanta was making the conference finals, because I think that they believed that they were closer than they really were and didn't take into account that just some dominoes fell their way, and that's why they got there. I think that they believed like, oh no, we're a year away from being a champion, right? And they just kind of like push their chips to the table, but in a wrong direction, right? Like I talked about like Minnesota. I've talked about that, right? Where I think Minnesota messed up because they were heading in the right direction and they needed to just stay the course, but they tried to expedite it and went and got a piece that became clunky and didn't make sense and kind of neutralized Anthony Edwards to an extent, and then kind of took what made Karl Anthony Towns special at the center position away. And granted, they haven't had a bunch of time to play together, so maybe that changes a bit, right? Maybe they're able to figure it out, but it is a little questionable. It's kind of how I feel with Atlanta. But instead of going big, they went small and got a guard, right? Where it's just like, I think that they just needed to stay the course, keep growing and building, make tweaks here and there, rather than just like make a move that just is a little awkward, right? But I don't know. Time will tell. Anyway, as always, this is a discussion, so I pass the question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think of Trae Young? Think Lakers should go get him? Do you think that they shouldn't? Do you think, like, again, try to keep it in your back pocket? If it's kind of push comes to shove, then go get him. However you feel, whatever your thoughts are, I'd love to hear it. Let me know down in the comments.